In the beginning of everything, there was a huge void known as Ginnungagap between the fire realm of Muspelheim and Niflheim, the icy land of mists. The freezing mists of Niflheim began to fill the Ginnungagap void and formed a great block of ice. As the temperature in Muspelheim began to rise, the heat from the fire started to melt the great ice stone. From within the ice emerged Ymir, a primitive deity who had hibernated within the ice. After the thawing, Ymir continued to sleep, but the heat of Muspelheim caused the colossal creature to sweat. From the sweat emerged the first living creatures. It was not only Ymir that emerged after the melting of the ice. A great cow named Arhumla also emerged. From her teats flowed 4 rivers that fed Ymir. The cow fed herself by licking a block of salty ice, and, as the ice was consumed, a new creature emerged. This being was Buri, the progenitor of the gods. While Ymir slept, he continued to generate life, giving rise to the Jotun. Buri united with a giant to give birth to Bor. Bor joined with the giant Besla to give birth to Odin, Vili, and Ve. Odin and his brothers lived frustrated and bored in the emptiness of Ginnungagap, as there was no sky, land, sea, or forests yet. The brothers decided that something had to be done. Only the death of Ymir could start the world we know today. Odin, Vile, and Ve attacked and killed the giant Ymir. From her blood the oceans were born. From Ymir's flesh grew dry land, and her great bones were piled up, giving rise to the mountain ranges. In Ymir's flesh were small larvae. From them emerged the dwarves, who were to live beneath the earth, and the noble elves, who were to reside in Elfhelheim. After shaping Midgard, the gods thought that this could not be an uninhabited realm. Seeing 2 logs at the edge of the ocean, they decided that they would use that material to create mankind. A man known as Ask and a woman named Embla were shaped. Odin gave them life, Vili gave them intelligence, and Ve carved their eyes, ears, and mouths. With these, the men would be able to hear, see, and speak. All humans are descended from this first couple. Because he gave life to the first couple, Odin is known as the father of all. Finally, the brothers created the kingdom of Asgard, the home of the gods. This realm was separate from the others, connected only by the Bifrost Bridge. This was the beginning of the reign of the gods over the world. After creating the world on the body of the giant Ymir, who had been killed by the Aesir gods, Odin went on to reign over the world atop his throne in Asgard. Even though he was a wise god, he was aware that he did not know everything. So he set out on an adventure in search of knowledge. He disguised himself as a wanderer and walked through Jotunheim, the land of giants and enemies of the gods. In this realm lived Mimir, a very ancient deity and uncle of Odin. He lived near the Well of Knowledge. The waters of this well were responsible for feeding Yggdrasil, the Tree of Worlds. Mimir, using the Gjallarhorn horn, drank sacred water, and his knowledge of the world increased. Odin went to his uncle's well and asked him to drink the water of knowledge. "Mimir, I'm your nephew and lord of the gods, but how can I be worthy of my title without true wisdom? Being my kinsman or lord of the gods does not give you the right to drink from my well. The price is much higher than you can imagine." "Tell me the price. I'm willing to pay it." "The price is your eye. I want you to pluck it out and throw it into the well. Only then will you be able to drink the water from the Well of Knowledge." Odin knew that Mimir did not tell jokes. He would have to pay a high price if he were to attain true wisdom. The great god did not flinch, and gouged out his own eye. His cry of pain was so loud that it echoed throughout the universe. Odin deposited his eye in the waters of the well, and this sacrifice satisfied Mimar. He offered him a horn with the water from his well, and he asked the god to drink the entire contents at once. After drinking the entire contents of the container, the Father of All was filled with knowledge. A large scar filled the void where his eye had previously been, which at times emitted a brightly glowing flame. Odin came to be known as the One-Eyed Man, or the One with the Flaming Eye. Odin began to see the world much more clearly. With only one eye, he could see better than when he had two. Odin, the One-Eyed God, reigned on his throne in Asgard, the realm of the Aesir gods. His court had other deities, which further increased the prestige of Odin's kingdom. But another kingdom was also extremely prestigious among men: Vanaheim, the land of the Vanir gods. These competed with the Asgardians for the worship of mortals. Both kingdoms coexisted, but always with tension between them. The gods of Asgard descended from Vili, Ve, and Odin, who in the early days defeated the giant Ymir. The origin of the Vanir was unknown. Besides Odin, Thor and Loki were the most prominent deities in Asgard. In Vanaheim, the highlights were Frey, Freya, and Njord. The Asgardians were deities connected with power and war, while the Vanir were gods of fertility. There was Gulveig, a strong sorceress known for her greed and love of gold. The gods of Asgard found her unbearable and tried 3 times to burn the witch, but she always returned. But the sorceress was an ally of the Vanir gods, who were outraged by the way the Asgardians treated their protege. The precarious peace between Vanir and Aesir ended, and the first great war between gods broke out. Odin threw his powerful spear at the Vanir. It was a sign that this would not be a simple disagreement, but a battle that could decide the fate of the world. No other war would be as important until Ragnarok. The Vanir gods would eventually march against Asgard, bringing down part of the mighty wall erected by the giant builder. The conflict between the gods made the world tremble. Both sides showed their worth, fighting with great courage. Neither side was able to overthrow the other, and the devastation of the war worried both sides. The war could last for millennia, and if one side were to win, it would rain only on ashes, for nothing would be left after such a massive conflict. Therefore, the authorities on both sides decided to seal the peace between the two peoples. To ensure goodwill, an exchange of hostages took place. The Asgardian gods Mimir and Honir would move to Vanaheim, while Frey, Freya, and Njord would move to Asgard. The two gods who came to live in Vanaheim were described as great sages, but in fact only Mimir was endowed with wisdom. Honir pretended to be wise, but only repeated what Mimir whispered in his ear. The Vanir noticed that when Honir was consulted about some issue and Mimir was not around, he would always reply, "Let the others decide." Realizing that they had been deceived and that Mimir was complicit in that plan, the Vanir gods cut off their heads and returned them to Odin. The Father of All did not want to lose Mimir's wisdom and used his powers to resurrect the head. Mimir was revived, and Odin began to consult the sage's head when he needed his precious advice. A new peace agreement was sealed between Vanir and Aesir, and the two peoples began to live in harmony. The Vanir gods were placed on the Norse pantheon alongside the Aesir. Thus, gods such as Frey and Freya came to be admired as other great Aesir gods.
Sif, the goddess and wife of the mighty Thor, had beautiful and long golden hair, and from all the goddess's traits, her hair was the one that attracted the thunder god the most. But one day, Thor woke up and was faced with a bald woman in his bed and yelled,
"Who are you, witch? And what have you done with my beloved Sif?"
The god, stunned, recognized his wife and shouted,
"Loki!"
The scream was heard throughout the whole kingdom of Asgard. During the night, Loki, the god of mischief, concocted yet another of his pranks. While the goddess was sleeping, he cut her beautiful hair. The thunder god dragged Loki up to his room, where Sif cried copiously,
"Look at what you have done! How did you dare to cut my wife's hair? What now? Do I have to parade with a bald wife right by my side?"
"Have you ever thought about the possibility of making her wear a hat?" Thor lifted Loki from the floor and said,
"If you do not find a way to make my Sif regain her splendor, I will break every single one of your bones."
Considering that threat, the god of mischief started to think of a way to solve that situation, until he had an idea. So he departed towards Svartalheim, the dwarf land. He was aware that the skillful dwarves were able to do anything, but before that, he would have to convince them. Then he looked for the brothers, sons of Ivaldi, who were skillful craftsmen, and said, "You don't know the latest news. The gods will conduct a trial to establish who the best craftsmen are. And the brothers Brock and Eitri said that you, sons of Ivaldi, do not have the slightest chance."
"That's an outrage. Those pierced, clumsy hands will not have the slightest chance against us."
"Very well, but there is one condition. You have to do 3 gifts for the gods, and one of them has to be a long golden hair that never stops growing." Loki departed to incite the brothers Brock and Eitri to establish a competition. You will not believe this. The sons of Ivaldi will participate in a contest promoted by the gods to decide who the best craftsmen are, and they said you don't have any chance, given that you are nothing but a bunch of clumsy guys.
"Clumsy guys? Huh. That's quite typical of the sons of Ivaldi, but we will not compete. Everybody already knows that we are much better, so we have nothing to gain."
"I bet that you are not better than the legendary brothers Ivaldison. I would bet my own head on it."
"The head of the most elusive of gods seems a nice prize to me. I accept the bet."
Loki trembled, but did not step back and accepted the bet. He also knew that Brock and Eitri were better than the sons of Ivaldi, but now he would have to use all of his cunning talents to untangle himself from that mess. The dwarves, sons of Ivaldi, started to make their gifts for the gods, and Loki noticed that everything seemed to went well. But the god realized that the other pair was doing something outstanding. Loki then understood he had to intervene. Brock and Eitri had already built 2 beautiful gifts, but they were certainly crafting the greatest of all works. It was a powerful hammer. To achieve perfection, the dwarves had to keep the forge at an ideal temperature, not a degree more or less. And Brock did his work by pumping the bellows with great precision. Loki noticed he had to act quickly and turned himself into a large hematophagous mosquito. He flew to Brock and painfully stung his hand. The dwarf withstood the pain and continued his work. Then Loki attacked with an even stronger sting in his neck. The dwarf unleashed painful cries but resisted. The god then decided to attack the dwarf's eyes. He closed his eyes, and the eyelids were attacked. The agony was unbearable, and the dwarf stopped pumping the bellows. Due to the temperature change, the hammer's handle broke. Loki considered his mission accomplished and went away. The time for the great clash had arrived, and the dwarves, sons of Ivaldi, presented their gifts to the gods. The goddess Sif, wife of Thor, was gifted with new hair made of gold. Seeing the goddess with her splendor back, Loki felt some relief. Odin was gifted a beautiful and powerful spear, capable of piercing anything, and every oath made under that spear would be unbreakable. Frey was given a huge boat, which could be folded so many times to the point where it could fit into a pocket. Those were 3 impressive gifts, much to Loki's relief. The turn of Brock and Eitri had come. The latter still had puffy eyes because of the sting. He gave bracelets made of Draupnir gold to Odin, a material from which, every 8 nights, new bracelets would fall from it like drops. These could serve as honorary ornaments, or a way to increase wealth. Frey was given a huge boar with golden fur, which could be mounted. The creature could fly and never be tired, and his shine drove the darkness away. And Thor's time finally arrived, and he was given a hammer.
This is a beautiful hammer, but its handle is too short. I understand your disappointment, but don't judge this hammer by its handle. Its name is Mjolnir. It is indestructible, and its power is almost indescribable. When thrown, it never misses its target and always comes back to its owner. Such a marvelous piece! With this powerful hammer, no giant will be a match for me.
Odin, Thor, and Frey agreed that, from all those gifts, the Mjolnir hammer was certainly the best. Despite all the tricks, Loki's plan collapsed, and now his head was demanded as a prize.
Ha 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 ha! Now I want your head,
Brokey said, already sharpening his axe. But Loki had one last play. You can sever my head, as long as you do not damage a single piece of my neck. The agreement says that you can only have my head.
You cheater! How will I get your head without damaging the neck?
Then Odin intervened.
If people paid more attention to the words used, they would never negotiate with the cunning Loki, the trickster god.
Brokey, to punish Loki, sewed his mouth so that he would never deceive anyone again for a long time. But at least the cheater kept his head on his neck. And the gods of Asgard received magnificent artifacts. The gods Thor and Loki crossed the world in Thor's chariot, which was pulled by powerful goats. The gods had left for the kingdom of the giants, looking for taking part in new adventures. Before that, they stopped in a humble house, where the gods wanted to stay for the night. The gods were warmly welcomed by the villagers, but being poor, they had nothing to offer as food. Thor told them not to worry, because he would provide a bountiful meal. The god himself slaughtered his own goats and had their meat prepared for a meal that would honor any god. The god of thunder offered food to the dwellers who welcomed him, and then he said,
"You can eat as much as you want. I only ask you to leave the bones unscathed."
While everyone ate the delicious goat meat, Loki decided to do one of his pranks. He approached the hut's young resident, known as Tjalfi, and he told him, "There is no fairness at all in allowing Thor to keep all the delicious marrow which fill these bones just for himself. Such a delicacy would give great strength to those who eat it." The boy now wanted to try it. He waited until everyone was asleep and broke one of the bones to taste the marrow. The bones were then thrown over the skin of the slaughtered goats. The next day, Thor did a ritual and brought the goats back to life. However, one of the goats was now limping because its leg had been broken. Thor was enraged and grabbed his powerful hammer.
"You bastards! I offered you plenty of food and just got betrayal as a return. Who did this?"
Loki tried to conceal his smile. Tjalfi, regretting his action, confessed the crime.
"Just give me one reason why I shouldn't destroy this house, together with those who live in it."
"Spare my family. They did nothing. Take me as your servant, so that I may pay my debt to the gods."
Thor was benevolent and decided to spare Tjalfi's family, and they now would have to treat his goats. While Thor, Loki, and Tjalfi departed to explore the land of the giants. Thor, Loki, and his new servant Tjalfi roamed through the inhospitable kingdom of Jotunheimer, the land of the giants. The intense cold forced them to look for shelter. The gods found what appeared to be a huge cave, and they went inside. The travelers tried to rest, but an immense noise trembled the earth. Thor stepped out of the cave to investigate the source, and from the top of a mountain, he noticed that a huge giant slept beside their cave, and his snoring shook the whole ground. The giant woke up, and he did not appear particularly threatful. Thor realized that the giant wore only one glove, while the other was actually the cave they were sheltered. The giant tried to pull on his glove, and Loki and Tjalfi fell from it. The huge giant introduced himself to the travelers.
I'm Skirmir, and if you wish, I can serve as your guide, while also carrying all your luggage.
The gods accepted the offer. After all, they did not know the region that well, and having the opportunity not to carry their own goods would certainly be a great relief. Skrymir put everything inside his own bag and initiated the journey. The giant was now tired and decided to take a nap. Night came and the travelers started to feel hungry. They tried to open the sleeping giant's bag but failed. Unable to wake the giant, Thor, angered with hunger, grabbed his hammer and struck the giant's head with fierceness. After the blow, the sleepy giant said,
A leaf must have fallen on the top of my head. Well, it was nothing anyway.
And went back to sleep. Dawn was around the corner, and the hungry travelers waited for the giant to wake up to finally eat their breakfast. But Skrymir was still asleep. The angered Thor hammered the giant's head with all his might. Such a blow could destroy any giant's head, but Skrymir just woke up as if he had been bothered by an insect. Thor was amazed by the giant's endurance. No way a creature could withstand such a blow. After waking up, the giant said,
Your destination is right there, where Utgaror is located, the place of my giant friends. There they call me soft and weak. I think it's now time for us to go.
Thor and his fellows went to the giant's palace. The god was a little worried. If Skrymir was the little one, what would he find in Utgaror, the domain of the king of the giants? Thor, his servant Tjalfi, and Loki were all exploring the kingdom of the giants, and they finally arrived at the enormous castle of Utgaror. The Aesir gods entered the palace and encountered the huge giants who lived there. The one who stood out the most welcomed them.
Welcome to my palace. I'm the lord of this palace. I have always heard that you Asgardians consider yourselves to be the greatest of all. How about we take part in a dispute? I can defeat you in any kind of competition you can imagine, said Thor with confidence. Calm down, Odin's son. The first to compete will be Loki, son of the glorious giant Lofi.
Loki would face Logi, the giant's servant, to know who could eat the banquet on the table more quickly. Loki and Logi started eating all the food with incredible speed, and they both finished at the same time. Loki ate all the food, but the giant Logi ate even the bones, platters, and cutlery, so he was declared the winner. The servant Tjalfi also engaged in a race against a giant who was still a child. Tjalfi was one of the fastest men that ever lived, yet he had no chance against the hasty giant boy.
For you, mighty Thor, I pose 3 challenges. First, you should drink all the beverage in this horn at one go.
Thor grabbed the horn with confidence, as drinking a lot was one of his skills. The god drank, and drank that salty liquid until he reached his limit. But he only managed to decrease the liquid that filled the horn a little bit.
Ha ha ha! You drink like a maid. I'll make it easier for you. In this next race, you will have to lift my pet cat.
You got to be kidding me, said Thor, approaching the cat. Much to Thor's surprise, the cat was incredibly heavy. The god of thunder managed to lift the cat over his head, but it could still touch the ground with its paws.
It appears that the stories they tell about you are just legends, and you cannot lift a cat up. In your last ordeal, you must fight my foster mother.
That was when an old giantess appeared in the room. Thor felt offended for having to fight this old woman, but he decided to fight her to secure at least one win for Asgard's team. The fight began, and Thor was surprised by the old giantess's strength. The god used all his strength against the old lady, and at times, it appeared that the victory was in his hands. But the old woman managed to drop Thor to his knees. Defeated, the gods and their servant left the Utgaror palace, with their heads pointing down. The king of the giants followed the Asgardians to his kingdom's boundaries and, when saying goodbye, he declared,
Now that we're alone, I can tell you a secret. I have fooled you all along.
The king of the giants said that he had disguised himself as the giant Skrymir, the one who had guided Thor and his fellows through Jotunheimer. And, had he not had used magic at that moment, he would have been dead. After all, when Thor tried to hit his head with his hammer, the god hit a mountain instead, turning the hill into a valley.
Dear Loki, you also have been deceived by an illusion. Actually, you were competing against a fire, and that fire engulfs everything in its path. You, Thjalfi, you competed against a thought, and even though you are extremely fast, nothing is faster than a thought. And what sort of tricks did you use against me in your palace? Said Thor, demanding an explanation. Now that we no longer have an audience, I can praise you for your strength and determination. The giant explained that the horn grabbed by Thor was connected to the ocean, so Thor was able to bring the sea level down a few meters, which was an incredible feat. As for the cat, he was actually lifting Jormungand, the world's serpent, and the mere fact that Thor could raise part of the snake off the ground was a huge accomplishment. Nevertheless, what stunned the giant the most was that Thor almost defeated the old woman, who was oldness itself, and time beats everyone down the road. Thor despised being tricked, and he would have crushed the giant, but he relied on his magic to vanish, along with his castle, for he feared the gods' vengeance. The gods returned to Asgard. Thor knew that beating oldness or drinking all the water from the ocean was impossible, but defeating the world's snake was something he deemed feasible. And because of that, Thor started to wish to cross paths with Jormungand again, just to have the opportunity to beat it. Thor, the god of thunder, had won the mighty hammer Mjolnir as a gift, thanks to Loki's prank. With this hammer, Thor defended the kingdom of Asgard, tackling any sort of threat. But one day after waking up, Thor sensed that his hammer was missing. The god looked for Mjolnir in his room and only found a message which said, "If you want to recover your beloved hammer, visit me in my domains so that we can negotiate. You will get it back in exchange for an appropriate ransom."